Think of the effort required to acquire new customers, the marketing spend, the brand building, the campaigns. Finally, they buy. You might think that it's a closed sale and that the hard part is over, but the sale is only the beginning.
20 to 70% of new customers will leave before the 100-day anniversary.
And the cost of replacing them?
It's anywhere from 5 to 25 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than retain an existing customer.
Today on Questions for Now, why your newest customers are your most vulnerable, and what it takes to make them stay. I'm joined by retention experts Joey Coleman and TELUS Digital's Brian Breslin to find out, why do satisfied customers leave? Welcome to Questions for Now, a podcast from TELUS Digital where we ask today's big questions in digital customer experience. I'm Robert Zirk. Yes, you heard correctly. 20 to 70% of new customers vanish before the 100-day mark. And looking at specific industries,
Software as a service is 20%, banks 32%, auto mechanics 68%, restaurants 40 to 70% depending on the type of cuisine you serve.
That's Joey Coleman, keynote speaker and author of Never Lose a Customer Again and Never Lose an Employee Again. He spent 2 decades researching customer retention across virtually every industry, and both B2B and B2C.
As I've traveled to organizations around the world on all 7 continents and talked to them about keeping their customers, very few of them know when their customers are leaving. They don't know why their customers are leaving. And importantly, they don't know how quickly their customers are leaving after becoming customers. And if you don't know the answers to those questions, it's really difficult to create the relationships and the interactions that are going to keep a customer long term.
When you think about the idea of a satisfied customer leaving, it sounds like an oxymoron. After all, if a customer is satisfied, why would they leave in the first place? And especially so soon? Brian Breslin, in his role at TELUS Digital, has a track record of working with companies from fast-growing startups to global brands. From this experience working with brands, he's identified a few reasons why their seemingly satisfied customers might leave. First off, Brian has seen brands experience customer churn when there's just a better offer that appears in the market for them.
It doesn't need to be a significantly better offer. If there's not really any loyalty anchoring you to a brand or a product, a slightly better offer can be enough for you to move on to something else.
Another reason customers leave is a misalignment between company values and the values customers hold.
Customer can be satisfied with the product, but if they're not satisfied with how the company holds themselves in the world, or if the values misalign with their own, that can be enough of a reason for them to look elsewhere. We see this now all the time with brands being called out, whether it be to do with how they treat data privacy or other scandals, and people are very quick to distance themselves from brands that don't align with their own values.
And finally, small problems can add up over the course of the early customer experience to a point where it only takes one more to tip the scale.
If it's one thing after the next, it all builds up and it wears you down and it ruins any goodwill that has been built. And when someone else comes in with an offer that's smoother or requires less effort, it's very easy for you to make that switch and move on.
The key that underpins each of these scenarios is that satisfaction can't be confused for loyalty.
Satisfaction is a fragile sort of passive state. Someone can be satisfied, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're very engaged or emotionally invested.
So satisfied customers leave because satisfaction on its own isn't enough. But what causes a sudden churn within the first 100 days? Joey's research reveals 3 predictable moments when this happens. The first takes place in what Joey calls the affirm phase of the customer journey, which is immediately after they make their purchase.
Right after a customer makes a decision to do business with you, they sign on the dotted line, they hand over their hard-earned cash, they begin to doubt the decision they just made. Meanwhile, your team's high-fiving, celebrating, oh, we landed the sale, this is amazing, this is incredible. But at your customer's office or home, they're going, did I make the right choice? I'm not sure. What if this doesn't work out? What if we start spending some money with them and it goes so poorly that we've got to get out of the relationship? How do I get out of the relationship? Is it quick and easy to quit? What if my boss talks to me about this, and are they going to be frustrated that I made the decision to hire these people? All of that fear and doubt and uncertainty about the future is happening in the mind of your customer immediately after the purchase.
In other words, buyer's remorse. That feeling of doubt and anxiety immediately after you make a purchase. You wonder if you made the right choice or if you even needed to make it at all.
And yet most businesses aren't even addressing it. Almost every business leader I know is familiar with the phrase buyer's remorse. But if I ask them, do you have a system and a process in your business designed to address the buyer's remorse that we scientifically know every customer experiences? Most businesses don't. It's not that we don't know it's a problem, it's that we're not deploying any resources to address it.
One tactic to reduce buyer's remorse is to be responsive at every stage of the customer journey. According to research from Shopify, companies that engage with customers via live chat within a 5-minute window are 69% more likely to close a sale. And that same principle of quick, proactive communication also applies after the sale, when timely reassurance can prevent buyer's remorse. For example, for a customer who's made a purchase, reach out to them within hours, not days, and not with a generic thank you for your order email, but with specific messages of reassurance that give them full confidence that they're going to get what they paid for and they're going to be delighted with it. In this way, you remind them why they made the right choice. The second moment when customers rethink their purchase happens during onboarding, what Joey calls the acclimate phase. And while you and your team are deeply familiar with your product or service delivery,
to a brand new customer, they have no idea what it's like to do business with you. They have no idea about your cadence of communication. They have no idea when to expect deliveries. They have no idea how to do setup. They have no idea how to get up and running. They have no idea who to call if something goes wrong. And some of you may be saying, but Joey, we outlined this in the proposal. We gave them this in the contract. They didn't read it. We're not reading any of the stuff we accept. If we as consumers aren't reading the things that are being put in front of us, why do we presume that our customers are reading what we're putting in front of them? They're just not.
A Wise Owl study shows that more than 90% of customers believe there's room for improvement in how companies onboard new users and customers. So customers might be satisfied with the product or service itself, but they can often feel lost. To counteract this, Joey stresses the importance of clearly communicating each step of the journey.
We've got to hold their hand. We've got to let them know, here's what we were doing for you. Here's what we're doing for you right now. And here's what we're going to do next.
And Joey has a test for this.
At any given point, I should be able to call any customer of yours and say, what is the last thing Robert did for you? What is the thing he's working on for you right now? And when he's done with this, what is the next thing he's going to work on for you? And if your customers can't answer that question, if they don't know where they are in the timeline, that's not on them. That's on us.
The third reason customers leave within the first 100 days is the quietest one.
See, we often think of customers as leaving in a huff or a tizzy. They flip over the table. That's it. I'm done with you guys. I'm never doing business with you again. And sometimes that's how customers leave. But more often, customers leave by ghosting us. They just decide not to come back. They decide not to renew.
And whether you're at a B2B company or a B2C with a subscription model, this would likely take your team by surprise. After all, there weren't any complaints. The customers seemed satisfied, so your team jumps into action. They attempt to get a meeting on the calendar, trying to win the customer back.
Friends, at that point, it's too late. The reason many customers leave is because they didn't feel like we cared if they stayed. There was nothing that we were communicating with them, nothing that we were doing with them. None of the interactions we were having left them feeling wanted, left them feeling appreciated, left them feeling valued.
Joey warns that simply delivering the product or service isn't enough. On its own, it's expected. It's transactional.
So we were transactional and we're surprised that they became transactional and went with a competitor who was a lower price? No, Joey, it was about relationships. Oh, great. What were we doing that was relational? If you want relationships, you have to be relational in your behaviors.
So those are the 3 moments when customers leave. First, right after they buy. Buyer's remorse sets in, and you don't have a strategy to address it. After that, during onboarding, when the customer lacks clarity about what happens next. And lastly, the drift. A customer who feels like they aren't valued or that they're just another transaction will quietly walk away in pursuit of something better. Those 3 moments, within the span of 100 days, can also have ramifications beyond just a lost customer, as Brian explained.
It's anywhere from 5 to 25 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than retain an existing customer. So when you're losing customers, you're increasing your spend exponentially on the marketing side and the sales side just to stand still or stay in the same place.
The second cost is to your brand's reputation, as lost customers often become critics.
With social media and everything today, when somebody leaves, not only are you losing that network effect of people talking positively about your brand or product, but you're also at risk of them sharing negative stories of why they left and creating negative sort of social proof of what's wrong with your brand or with your product.
And the third cost is to your team.
If you're working in a company and there's a huge customer churn rate, it's a bit demoralizing for your frontline team members. They feel like you're constantly dealing with unhappy customers, trying to win them back, and it creates burnout and turnover in your employees as well.
We've covered the moments and consequences that separate satisfied customers from loyal ones. So how can you create customer loyalty? Joey says it comes down to something most businesses overlook: how you make people feel. That starts by creating an experience that goes beyond good enough. An experience that's remarkable.
If we look at the word remarkable and we dissect that word, it means worthy of talking about, worthy of making a remark about, rising to the level that I've got to tell someone. What are you doing in your day-to-day business that makes a customer say, oh my gosh, that was amazing. That was incredible. That was unexpected. They went above and beyond.
Joey cautions that a remarkable experience doesn't necessarily mean you've got to spend more to deliver it. Rather, a remarkable experience is about going beyond the transaction and cultivating a relationship with your customers.
Remarkable experiences are more about the feeling than the cost. They're more about the emotion than the expense. That's the secret. We've got to think about, how do we want our customers to feel throughout the journey, instead of what do we want to say to them? What do we want to do with them? What do we want to give them? Great, those things are relevant. But more importantly is, how do I want you to feel at every step in your relationship with me? And am I doing things proactively to increase the likelihood that you will feel that emotion?
Joey shared an example of what this looks like in practice.
There's a company called Zogix, and they create products that are used by gyms and health clubs and spas around the world. They're an e-commerce business, so you go online, you order some products, and you get the box in the mail. Now, when your first order ships, you get a brief little survey before it even arrives. It says, hey, the package is on its way. 3 quick questions. So let me ask you, Robert. Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Sweet. Hot or cold beverage?
Cold.
Anyone in particular?
Root beer.
Root beer. I love it. Root beer's my favorite. Brilliant. Dog or cat? I know the answer to this one, but let's play along.
My dog Scoot made an on-screen cameo at the beginning of our recording.
Dog.
Okay, great.
So let's use my example and say you answer the 3 questions: sweet, cold beverage, root beer specifically, and dog. Your first order arrives. Everything's fine, and the product is great. You're not even thinking about the quick survey from before. But when your second order arrives,
Inside that order, there's a little handwritten thank you note. It says, hey, Robert, will you give these to Scoot, please? And it includes 3 little dog treats. You can't see that Robert's face just lit up like a Christmas tree. He was like, what? Presents for Scoot? Scoot's in the background jumping up and down going, presents for me? This is amazing. Now let's say the 4th order comes along, and I've noticed that Robert's increasing his order, and I really like this. And I send Robert a 6-pack of root beer with a little note that says, hey man, thanks so much for giving us a try and continuing to do business with us. We are so excited that you've decided to make us your provider of gym towels or whatever we're selling. Now we're having an entirely different interaction. This simple. And how did we get to that? With a quick little 3 survey question with a little follow-ups afterwards, like, oh, specifically, what cold beverage? Oh, dog? What's the dog's name? So now I know Robert likes root beer, Robert likes sweets, and Robert has a dog named Scoot. I can take that information to create remarkable experiences for him going forward till the end of time, because we will continue to be able to deepen the relationship and learn more things about him and create these kind of remarkable experiences.
Remarkable doesn't have to be expensive either. Think about the cost of a few dog treats or a six-pack of root beer.
When you find things that people love, they connect in a completely different way. It's a different level of interaction. Every one of your customers is a human. Every human has dozens of things that are unique about them that you can connect with.
Research from Digital Silk indicates that 76% of customers say they'd stay loyal to brands that are capable of connecting with them on a personal level. Joey reminds CX leaders not to think of creating a remarkable customer experience as a task, but rather as a philosophy.
What I mean is that all too often businesses, when they think about we need to be more remarkable, will work to figure out 3 to 5 ways to be more remarkable this quarter. Instead of saying, what is it like to have a philosophy of being remarkable? How can I be remarkable every day in every interaction? It requires work. And in some ways, the thought of that can be rather daunting. But the execution of that is actually invigorating. We've all had this experience. We do something special for someone. It makes their eyes light up. What does that do? It energizes us. It doesn't deplete us. Smiling at someone and they smile back doesn't cost us anything. In fact, it refuels us to smile at the next person. We're missing the opportunity to double back down into a philosophy of caring, a philosophy of showing people that they matter, telling people that they matter, appreciating them, valuing them, listening to them, seeing them.
Now, you might be thinking, dog treats and root beer have nothing to do with gym supplies. So if the reason I'm there is to purchase supplies for a gym, why not offer me a discount code instead? After all, it would be easier to scale.
If I were to give you a 5% discount on your next gym order, that doesn't feel remarkable or special. It feels salesy. If I were to give you a 10% discount, you're like, probably not. 50%, 75%, you're like, are they going out of business? What is going on? They got to move some product. They're just trying to buy stuff, right? But if I send you a 6-pack of root beer, you're like, oh my gosh, I matter. They care about me.
When you transcend the transactional to become remarkable, you turn satisfied customers into loyal advocates. Joey Zogic's example shows the emotional side, the personal connection, the feeling. And that emotional connection is one of 2 universal truths of customer retention that Brian identified.
So how do you make people feel connected to your brand or part of your brand? Apple, for example, do this. They make people feel like their iPhone is part of their identity in a way, and this builds an emotional bond that's harder to break.
Research conducted by Motista reveals that customers who form emotional connections with brands demonstrate a 306% higher lifetime value over satisfied customers who hold no emotional connection. The other part of this equation is that brands need to continually focus on reducing customer effort, what Brian highlights as the largest predictor of disloyalty.
So how hard does a customer have to work to get their problem solved or to make a purchase or to find information? The brands that relentlessly focus on reducing this effort tend to win. An example is Amazon one-click checkout, which has been around forever, but is still a gold standard in that kind of effortless experience.
Brian shared another example of an effortless experience in action via a SaaS company TELUS Digital supports with customer service delivery. One of their customers
was trying to use their piece of software and get over this difficult part that they just couldn't figure out. But what happened with this company was the person stopped trying to do what they were figuring out. And then they had received an email with a 2-minute video showing them how to do exactly what they were trying to do. And then also a link to book a 15-minute call if they needed more help with an expert for that piece of the product that could walk them through it.
Remember how Joey mentioned that moments of uncertainty or frustration in the onboarding phase can cause customer attrition? Brian's example here of proactive support shows how you can turn a potentially negative situation into an emphatically positive one.
It was low effort, It was personal in the way it was framed to them, and it turned that moment of frustration into a moment of delight and empowerment.
When customers feel delighted, they stay. And when they stay, the numbers are staggering, as Joey noted.
Research out of Harvard Business School and Bain & Company, the organization that came up with Net Promoter Score, shows that if we can get 5% of the customers who are going to leave to stay, just 5%, it will increase profits 25 to 100%. Not revenues, profits.
Joey explained how that math works. You're running your business at a profit, so the first dollars your customer spends cover your operating costs. Once those are covered,
each additional dollar that customer spends is more profitable. The longer you're in a relationship with that customer, the more profitable it becomes. Why? You're able to serve them more effectively, more efficiently. You know what you like. There's less time to get approval. You make a recommendation, they say, we trust you. This is great. Let's do it. You spend a lot less time in the back and forth that's not generating revenue and a lot more time in the moving forward on delivering your products or your services. So the longer we keep a customer, the more profitable they are.
But if you're not paying attention to retaining your customers after acquiring them, especially when they leave before your marketing expenses have been recovered, the inverse applies.
Now the next person that joins, we've got to get them to profitable, and then we have to run them at profitable for a while to make up for the loss for the other person that left before we brought them in. And it just creates this cycle where businesses are struggling to keep their head above water when they're not making the investment in the relationships to keep the relationships for the long term.
Joey likened this to the difference between building long-term relationships and constantly having to put out fires. No sales, marketing, or CX teams want to feel like they're in that latter category. Implementing this philosophy across an organization isn't simple, but it is achievable, and Brian believes it comes down to culture.
Brands that see the customer experience not just as a department, but as the entire company's responsibility, they tend to do better because the product teams use CX metrics to prioritize features. The marketing team measures retention, not just acquisition. And they tend to empower their frontline employees to give solutions and resolve problems rather than having to just escalate things up the chain.
Like Joey mentioned earlier, CX shouldn't be thought of as a task, but as a philosophy, one that needs to be the responsibility of the entire organization. Making that shift requires buy-in from senior leadership. So how do you rally the C-suite around customer experience? Brian advises leaders to stop talking about CX in ways that only a CX team will understand.
Start speaking the language of the C-suite, which of course is revenue, cost, and risk. So instead of saying we need to improve CSAT or NPS, you can say something like our data shows that customers with a higher NPS have a longer life cycle of X% and they churn lower by X amount. And then you say investing 10 million in CX will reduce churn by 2% and generate X amount of million in retained revenue over the next 18 months.
When you demonstrate business impact, you're proposing an investment with measurable returns. With support from the C-suite, you can further empower your frontline team members to create remarkable experiences.
It's so important to remember that the frontline team members hear the customer's problem firsthand every single day. So you have to give them space to give you that feedback so you can turn it into actionable outcomes.
To build that space, Brian suggests creating dedicated channels where employees can send their ideas. But that's just the first step.
You need to implement a feedback loop. And with a feedback loop, you need it to go the whole way. So when someone submits an idea, they need to know when it was received, when it was reviewed, and what the outcomes are. It can't just disappear into the unknown. And then the final part is to celebrate and reward team members who contribute ideas that have great effects to the company.
That's how you build a culture where your team has the autonomy to create the kinds of experiences that turn satisfied customers into loyal advocates. As customer expectations evolve, so does the challenge of customer retention. Brian sees 3 trends gaining prominence. The first is that brands will need to be proactive in their personalization strategies, as customers now expect companies to better understand and predict their needs.
The companies who can't keep up with that expectation of the users are really going to fall behind very quickly. Ultimately, retention will be about the brand that make my life most seamlessly automated, in a sense.
Think back to the example of the SaaS company that sent a walkthrough video before the customer even asked for help. The second trend is an alignment in values, as Brian alluded to earlier on.
Customers are going to more and more so go with brands based on their stance on sustainability, data ethics, social issues. Retention is going to be about what the brand stands for as much as it is for what it sells.
And the third emerging trend Brian sees is the blur between digital and physical worlds in customer experiences.
With the growth we're seeing now with augmented reality and immersive digital experiences, brands are going to have to rethink their customer experiences in a digital world so that they're maintaining that sort of experience across in-store, website, and also virtual environments.
Take Warby Parker, for example. They're an eyewear designer and retailer. You can browse frames on their website, try them on virtually by using AR via their app, and visit the store in person for a final fitting. That's the level of seamless experience that customers expect across every channel. To wrap up, Brian challenges CX leaders to consider these two questions.
Ask yourself, if your biggest competitor is offering your customers a 15% or 20% discount, is your customer experience good enough to make your customers stay? And just to top that off, ask yourself, are you just measuring satisfaction or are you measuring loyalty?
Joey's closing advice to CX leaders is to do more things that can't be scaled.
You're not going to send a six-pack of root beer to every one of your customers. I'm not asking you to. You shouldn't. But do send it to the 4 or 5 who love root beer. Stop worrying about how am I going to take this thing that we've done that is so special and scale it across the enterprise. Don't do that. Instead, just do one-offs. Maybe have a thing that you try to do special every week, or a thing you try to do special every day, or empower your team to do one special thing per month. Hey, spend $100 on a customer, just whatever way you want. But then the feedback loop, which I didn't share on that, is at the next monthly meeting, you go around the table and you say, so Robert, who'd you spend your $100 on and why? Here's the situation. I spent $100 to send flowers to this, but $100 worth of flowers is a lot of flowers, right? And now we're having a conversation. I spent $100. I sent $100 worth of root beer to someone. Oh my gosh, that's going to get their attention. All of these things just require our willingness to be a little creative and a little thoughtful, and the return on our investment is tremendous.
Thank you so much to Joey Coleman and Brian Breslin for joining me and sharing their insights today. And thank you for listening to Questions for Now, a TELUS Digital podcast. If this episode challenged how you approach customer retention, share it with someone who needs to hear it, maybe even over their favorite hot or cold beverage. And for more insights on today's big questions in digital customer experience, follow Questions for Now on your podcast player of choice. I'm Robert Zirk, and until next time, that's all for now.